Welcome to the Nutrigenomic Nation podcast with Brian Highfield, certified nutritionist, author, speaker, and founder of multiple successful companies in the health world. Brian is known for educating healthcare professionals and others on improving their health and their life through breakthroughs in nutrition, technology, and biochemistry. On the podcast, Brian interviews thought leaders in the world of nutrition and natural health. He and his guests share the secrets of a whole life natural approach to health and the life-altering results you can get by making easy changes to your diet and daily routine.
Well, welcome to another episode of Nutrigenomic Nation, where we talk about topics related to your genetic health. So today we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Entrepreneur Body Whisperer, Dr. Brook Sheehan, and she is a chiropractor in California. Welcome to the program, Dr. Sheehan.
Thank you, Brian. Very excited to be here. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And so our audience always wants to know more about our guests. So can you share a little bit about your background and what made you want to become a doctor in the first place?
Yeah, of course. So this story actually gets started way back when my grandfather was growing up. He grew up with 13 siblings, 7 of which went into the medical field. His father was a doctor, medical doctor in England. And actually, Sheehan last name is very famous in the medical journals and medical annuals of research. So they were published in British Medical Journal and all these different areas. And my great uncle actually discovered a condition called Sheehan syndrome. And it's in medical literature, like I said today. Briefly, it's something that pregnant women can experience after giving birth to their child. If they lose too much blood, what happens is the pituitary gland in the brain up here swells up and essentially stops producing the hormones that it needs to make. And so, they live with this condition lifelong, and it's really unfortunate. But having had that quote unquote medical history in terms of my family, I grew up in that, oh, your grandfather was a doctor. And, my grandfather specifically was the dean of New York Medical School at the age of 29. So really young and really making a lot of change in the medical profession in good ways. And so growing up in that environment, it was like, oh, cool, fun family story, but never something that I ever really resonated with until I got pregnant with my daughter. And when I got pregnant with my daughter, I started seeing a chiropractor. I wanted to, have a really awesome natural birth. That was my personal goal. That's not everybody's, and I understand that, but that was my goal. And so I got under chiropractic care. The chiropractor that I was working with, he, was, you need to go to chiropractic school. And I was like, you're crazy. No way. I was working in the accounting field doing finance and reports and AR and AP and all that fun financial stuff. So that wasn't my gig until I actually at one point said, you know what, I'm going to go check out the school. I'll go check out chiropractic school. Let me get you off my back.
Yeah.
And I did. And I absolutely resonated just with the whole idea of being able to heal, help a person heal using natural methods. Like I mentioned in the beginning, my family came from a very strong medically based background, pill for every disease. And going into understanding chiropractors are doctors. They do, work with the human body and all of the anatomy and how everything works and flows, but approaching it from a natural standpoint first, before we have to go to those other measures of saying, okay, now you need to go see your primary care physician. You may need a prescription for X.
So it's an interesting family history there, and a great path to get to where you are now. And you say in your bio, you're kind of a body whisperer. And we talked a little bit before we started the interview about listening to what the body wants. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So chiropractors, a lot of people know, they might be the snap, crackle, pop, lay down, get your spine, neck adjusted, whatever. My type of chiropractic, I work with a mentor doc who has developed an entire method of being able to really, when the patient is lying on the table, being able to get the body to present, so to speak, like what the priority is. So that person might be coming in with gut dysfunction, right? Gut pain, stomach pain, something. And that's not typically something chiropractors would work with. But as a functional medicine practitioner, AKA body whisperer, we work with like whatever condition is lying on the table, and we're able to quote unquote speak to the body and have it, okay, the gut is the issue, but really what's going on is maybe they have a case of SIBO, which stands for small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. Maybe they have a hiatal hernia, their stomach is caught in the diaphragm, different things like that. But by speaking to the body and communicating with the body in a way that it understands, it begins to reveal the necessary pieces that it needs to do its job appropriately. On one aspect, if you think about it, if you spoke Spanish and I didn't speak Spanish, it would be very hard for us to communicate without a translator. We would need a translator, someone who spoke Spanish and English to help you and I communicate. I think of body whispering as being the translator for the person that's there saying, okay, this is what your body is seeking. This is what your body is asking for. This is how to support it.
Awesome. And so how do you test for things like that? I mean, how do you get to the root cause when people come in and they don't know exactly what's going on?
There's a lot of different ways that we do that. One of the big ways is through a body of work called Applied Kinesiology. So it's really looking at, we're using the muscle, so to speak, as the screen on the computer. So if I was to isolate a body part, like for instance, just touching the liver, and I test the muscle and the muscle is strong, and then I touch the liver and the muscle goes weak, the body is identifying that there is some sort of stress on the liver in that point. People, may look at applied kinesiology as like, ooh, this is just woo-woo stuff, but it's actually been around since 1965. Dr. George Goodhart, who founded or discovered AK, you might hear it as AK, applied kinesiology, has had a lot of research done, and sometimes they say, well, you pulled on the muscle too hard, or that was a different, sense of feel. And they've actually applied it to, those pressure gauges. And actually the same amount of pressure was applied in both senses. Just as soon as, in this case, I'm giving the example of the liver, as soon as the liver is isolated, the body can no longer hold that strong muscle because the nervous system, brain and spinal cord, is either on or it's off, and there shouldn't be anything in between.
Awesome. Now we were talking a little bit before we went live, and we were talking a little bit about supplementation. And I mean, it's a huge industry out there, and there's a GNC in every town. Vitamin World, or whatever your local vitamin shop is, and a lot of people just don't know what to get, and they just hear stories. Oh, this has helped so and so. I mean, what's your advice for people that looking for supplements?
My advice for people looking for supplements, this is going to sound very like crass and really blunt, but I apologize. This is something I'm very passionate about, is don't touch them. Like, don't buy them, don't touch them. I don't care if it's the most high quality, best tested, all sorts of, stamps of approval on them. If it's not right for you, it's not right for you. And just because, Brian, you mentioned, like people buying supplements based on what someone else has told them, brothers, cousins, friends, best friends, so-and-so, supplements are not a one size fits all. And it's important to actually like give the body supplements it actually needs. You can check DNA to find out exactly where your supplemental gaps are to give your body those specific supplements and nothing beyond that. Because honestly, what happens is you can cause more stress to your system because the body now has to stop doing all of its other normal processes like detoxing your body and keeping your energy cycles going and all of that. It has to stop all of that, put it to the side, and deal with whatever chemical concoction you just put into it, whether it's natural or synthetic, but it doesn't matter. It still has to break it down and do all of its work. So stop buying supplements just in my terminology, willy-nilly, like going on the shelves and pushing bottles into your cart. Stop doing that.
It's funny. I talk to people sometimes and they're like, oh my gosh, this has, 5,000% of your recommended daily value of something. And usually, like you said, that usually does more harm than good, because your body, first of all, the tax on it just to process that much is huge, and you're really being counterproductive.
Yes, absolutely. And, I mean, those recommended daily values, who are they based on? Are they based on someone 100 pounds and 4'2", or are they based on someone 6 foot 200 pounds? The gap or the spacing between so much of our individuality is not there. You just kind of take this big standard approach and you get this percentage of something that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of recent studies too that really talk about multivitamins in particular, because they're very popular. I grew up with the Flintstones chewables, right?
Me too.
And the Centrum is a big name out there, and studies have shown that they just don't do a whole lot in terms of your overall health. I mean, study after study has kind of shown that right. We're getting the nutrients we need that you would find in a multivitamin naturally through our food.
Some people may, turn around and say, yeah, well, our food supply isn't as adequate or as nutrient dense as it used to be, right? Like when our grandparents were growing up and the soil was rich and we didn't have all this monocropping farming and all of that stuff. But the reality is, if you're buying, organic fruits and vegetables and that kind of stuff, that could be a one size fits all. Like, decrease the amount of toxicity you're getting through the food that you're consuming, and you will start to get those nutrients that you do need, just like Brian had said.
Yeah, awesome. So talk a little bit about neurological assessments, and that's a big part of your practice. I mean, what are we talking about there?
We're talking about really just checking how the brain is functioning as a whole. So, you have, from a layman term, people just think the brain is the brain, but there's so many different pieces of the brain, and the brain is communicating with other areas of the brain. So it's important to look at how the cerebellum, which is considered the little brain, and the little brain actually, it's 10% of the entire brain mass, but it's 80% of all the neurons are in the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is actually, important for all of our joint proprioception, to be able to like stand and move around and know where your hand is in space and all these different things that the cerebellum does. But it also is important for emotions. So a lot of times people think the prefrontal cortex is just our emotion and our behavior thought center process, and it is, but the cerebellum has, projections into that. So during doing a neurological assessment with patients means checking every aspect of the brain and seeing how the function is in those areas, so that, we can see where improvement needs to be made, and we can see how changes are happening with certain treatments.
And I guess, what are some of the treatments that might be possible to help?
Cerebellar exercises, the brain loves complex movements. So just simply doing like a bicep curl, this is a simple movement. This is not doing much to the brain. But when you do more complex, like a figure eight, you could do figure eights with your arms on both sides. You could do figure eights with your legs. Those are brain exercises that help stimulate the cerebellum and kind of get everything functioning. You can do frontal lobe exercises. Those, if you've ever come across games on the web like Luminosity, those are all testing like prefrontal cortex, like the motor cortex up here. So those things help with, treating the brain, helping the brain, specific, and I say that so specifically, specific nutrients, like supplements can help impact the brain and the entire body. And just really look, it all comes back to having an aspect of intuitiveness, to where, you sometimes get that gut feeling like, I shouldn't eat this, And that gut feeling is your body actually saying, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So coming back and recognizing that there's a great knowledge that lies within you, and sometimes returning back to that instead of being so focused on all of the external things happening can make a big impact in your health overall.
Awesome. What would be your biggest piece of advice just for the public in general? So if you're in a stadium full of tens of thousands of people that want to improve their health and you were handed the microphone and can speak to them all at once, what would you tell them?
That's such a great question. And the one thing, because I actually had to think about this question, and I didn't know you were going to ask me this. I had to think about this question. Someone had asked me something very similar. And I'm like, what is the one thing? Because my belief and what we had talked about is everybody is individual, and there's no one size fits all health plan or no one size fits all nutrition plan. But the one thing that I would have to say is sleep. I think sleep has been the most, disregarded thing, quote unquote, thing in our environment of go entrepreneurs. My heart is with a lot of entrepreneurs that are like building their businesses and making massive impact in the world, but they are like forgetting to take care of themselves, and they're getting sick, and they're passing away a lot sooner. Steve Jobs is a great example of this, passing away a lot sooner than they should have, because they didn't take care of themselves. And sleep is the one mechanism where the body is able to actually like go in and flush out toxins out of the brain and repair and restore. And the supplements you're taking and the food that you're eating and all these things, they matter, but what matters is how the body is able to handle them. And so sleep is the one way that gives the body a fighting chance at healing and doing all of its work.
Awesome. Great advice.
Yeah.
So how can our audience learn more and connect with you?
Absolutely. So across all social media platforms, I'm at Dr. Brook Sheehan. So DRBROOK, no E at the end of my name. Sheehan, SHEEHAN. And website is the same, drbrookSheehan.com.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, we appreciate you being with us today, Dr. Sheehan. And I hope our audience has learned something today. I know I have. And we hope you all join us next time where we talk about another topic related to your genetic health. Thank you again, Dr. Sheehan.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.